Okay, in this lesson, what we're going to do is use Python to work with databases. So this will be something new for you. You've done quite a few exercises so far where you've done selections from databases. You've used the select function. So you've selected certain field names from tables, and then you've used the where clause, and then with the where you've used wildcards with the percentage sign or an underscore, or you've done things that are just equal to, and you've used the operators. Okay, so what we're going to do for what you're going to need to do is, first of all, go to your web browser and download the Python idle if you don't already have it. So if I go to python.org, so you can just Google Python, and under downloads it will offer you the latest version. So you can see it's 3.8.2 at the time of recording this video, and it's offering me automatically for Mac OS because that's what I'm running on this computer. If you're on a Windows computer, it will offer you Windows Python 64 bits. Okay, so download that and install it, and when you open it, you've got to open up idle, and then in idle you just do a new file and you'll get this window like so. With the new version of idle, you can get line numbers, so you can show the line numbers that you're getting up here. So the first thing we're going to do is put in a comment saying SQL query script, and then you can put the date. So I'm just going to put day, y, and then you can put the author. Right, so you put your name, and I'll put mine. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use sqlite. So that's what we were doing with our DB browser before. So what we're going to have to do to use SQLite in Python is import some modules. Okay, so call this modules, and here we will say from SQLite 3, so it's the third version, import everything, right, which is a star to import it all. Okay, now this is interesting because this module is already, when you download Python, this module is included in that download. So sometimes you do get modules which you try to use and they're not on your computer, you haven't got them installed. But as I say, this one comes with your Python download, just the same with the random one, which you may have used in the past in Python. We used random to get a random integer, for example. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is create a procedure called con, and this will be the connection to our database. Okay, so connects to database, and with the connection we've got to do two things. We've got to create a variable. I'm going to call it DB, right? So DB is short for database, and it will connect to a database of our choice. So in here we will have to put double quotes and then the name of the database. Okay, now in actual fact, this connect, where is that coming from? This bit that says connect here wouldn't work if this didn't exist, right? So if I had just done import SQLite 3 like this, import it a different way, I would have to write SQLite 3 dot connect like this. But because I've done it from SQLite import everything, I don't have to write this dot notation saying where it comes from. So connect is a function that comes from SQLite. Okay, so you just need to realize that this doesn't come by standard. So if you didn't import this module, this wouldn't work. This bit doesn't work. Now, what does connect do? Well, this connect, obviously, as you can imagine, connects to a database if you specify it here, or it will create a database, okay? So connects, creates DB, we'll write there. Now, the next thing you need to do with this DB is we will need to create something called a cursor. Now, a database cursor is something that you have to create which allows you to execute SQL. Now, how were we doing that before? Well, we were using our DB browser here, and we were just doing our SQLite directly. Sorry, it's just opened in a different window. We were just doing SQL statements directly in this execute SQL here, but we want to actually make it part of a program now. So you create this cursor. So this is going to be a variable called cursor. And, you know, some people do get confused about what these things are, but you can see it's always going to be a variable. So even though I'm not putting a string or an integer or a boolean in there, I'm putting a function inside my variable here. Okay, so the variable in terms of a data type is really not a data type like your normal data type. This would be sort of a function that it's got in it, right? So now I'm going to use dot notation to say that I've got db.cursor, and this is of course coming from this cursor. Dot cursor is also coming from SQLite 3, and I'm saying that I want to apply the cursor to this DB. Okay, and that's that done. Now what we will do then is this kind of procedure for the moment. We want to just get this information so we can use this connection file elsewhere in our program. Okay, so what we will then do is write return. Now usually when you return something, that turns this connection into a sort of function. So if you run it, it returns an answer or gives you back something. So we're going to return the DB and cursor in this case. So I'm going to put DB, comma, cursor. Okay, now this will become a bit more clear later whenever we're using it. Okay, so this is really nice to do this because we can then use this connection anytime. We can open connections, close connections, and so on. We can do all this all the time like this. Right, now what we're going to do is create a query. So we will call this query. We might give it a specific name in the future, but for the moment we'll just call it query. And we'll just say that this runs SQL query. Okay, so at the minute, everything that we've coded has all been, this is all Python, but at some point in this script, we're going to end up with some SQL, of course, in here. And then we'll also end up with some other language like HTML. So some of you may be familiar with HTML, which is used for websites. So we will make a web page. We will, instead of making PDFs, we could do that too. We could actually make PDFs from Python. We could write a Python script that would make a PDF for us and put all the SQL, just kind of like what you were doing previously with these previous exercises where you did an SQL statement, you outputted it to like a sort of CSV file and you made a PDF and so on like that. You did that manually. We could obviously get a script. We could write a program to do that, but we'll do it a little bit differently where we'll make a web page instead. Okay, so the actual SQL query, I'm just going to put a comment here saying SQL query, sorry, not query. And we've got to use our cursor. So we've got to get this DB and cursor into here. So what we need to do is run that, okay? So we will say DB and cursor. So what you got to realize, and I haven't really talked about this previously when we did Python, but anything contained in here is local to this function, right? Or procedure. So it's either a function or procedure. So DB, I can't access it down in query here because this is something else, right? This is different here. So DB and cursor, but if I return these, I can run the connection and it returns my Debian cursor, and I put it down here. So I've got Debian cursor. These are local variables. I could change the names if I wanted to, but it's probably best just to keep them the same. And I'm going to just say they're equal to the connection. So what's happening here is that I'm running this connection function. It returns this Debian cursor, and the Debian cursor gets put into here. Okay, so that will be my connection, which is going to connect to the database, and then this cursor for allowing me to execute SQL statements. So that's what that does. Okay, so we can just say runs connection function like that. Right, so with our SQL now we can actually use cursor, and we can say cursor.execute, and this is, as I said before, when we were using DB browser we were basically trying to execute SQL statements. Now in these quotes we will need to put an SQL statement. Now at the minute we don't even have a database, so what we will do here is just put 3 sets of quotes here, and then I'm going to press new line and just indent a couple of times, and 3 sets of quotes here. Now what that allows us to do, if I actually do, I can do double quotes or single quotes, doesn't matter, means everything in here now is going to be, like if I do that, you can see it's all going to be green, so it's all going to be a string. It's a multi-line string. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like this because this is where we will put our SQL statements, but we haven't got any to do yet. Okay, so the next thing we then need to do is, once we've got this execute, we then need to get that information and store it. So we would call this data, maybe that the variable is called data, and we will say cursor dot fetch all. Okay, so this is again fetch all is dot notation here. This is a method which we're getting from SQLite 3. This data, I just made it up. I could have called it ABC, right? But I'm going to give it something more appropriate, call it data. And this will fetch all, as you can see what the method says, from what the cursor has done. So cursor.execute will execute our SQL statement, and this will fetch it and get it and put it into data for us. So then we will then have information in data. After you've done that, so we'll put a comment and say fetch data from, no, just say fetch data. And then we can then close the database. So to close the database, obviously we've got this DB, so we need to do db.close, open and close brackets. That's another method, and that will close our database. Close DB, right? And that's it. That is our space for our query and for our connection. Now we can save this if we just do file, save as, and I'm going to just put it onto the desktop, and I'm going to call it SQL report, we'll call it, because we're eventually going to make it as a report. So save it. Now it's on the desktop. It's going to appear here. You probably want to save it into your folder. I'm just saving it here so you can see it. Now what we can do is test a little bit of it. So I'm going to, in my connection file here, in the connection, I'm going to put in a name. So I'm going to put test.db. Okay, so test.db, and what I said before is that it would try to connect to that or create it. Now, my file is on the desktop. There is no other files, as you can see. So what I need to do is run this. So if I just run my script, it's going to come up with nothing, of course, right? And the reason it's coming up with nothing is because I'm not running any of these. But if I type in con, open and close brackets, and it's just done it, and you can see it's given me back this connection, and it says, you know, cursor object is at, and we've got what's called a hexadecimal number here, right? So this is like a hexadecimal number. You don't need to know what a hexadecimal number is in depth really at the minute, but I've written con and it's created test.db for me. Now if I open it, of course it will be empty. Okay, this is an empty database. You can see there is 0 tables, right? Because you would obviously have to create those things. So you would have to create the data and you need to put stuff into that table as well. Now if I run this again, so just do F5 again and type in con, open close brackets, it's not going to create another database. This time it's just connecting to it. Okay, so the database already exists, it found test.db and just connected to it. Now just delete that file. The other thing you can do, as you can imagine, is you can run the connection from in your script. You don't need to actually type con open close brackets when you run the script. So you've done that before, where just at the bottom of the code, for example, I would write con open close brackets and it's done it automatically there for me. You can see I didn't write con here and it created the test.db. I'm just going to delete that again. So that we know that works, right? So that part of our script works absolutely fine. What we will then do, I'm just going to take that information out and leave this query like this so far. Now, the next thing that we will want to do is think about creating a web page. Okay. Now, with creating a web page, what we will want to do is learn a little bit of HTML. So I'm going to take out this con. I don't want this con anymore. And you notice that we didn't run query, and we don't want to really run query because we haven't got an SQL query to execute, and we don't have any database with any information in it to be able to have an SQL statement here. So there's no point in trying to run this at the moment. So underneath, we're just going to write def, and I'm going to call this web report. Okay, so I just make up this name, web report, and two dots, and this we'll put in the comments, creates a web page from the SQL statements. Okay, so that's what we will eventually want to do, is create a web page from this. So let's start. The first thing we want to do is create a variable called file. And again, we're not going to use strings or integers or anything like that. We're going to use a function called open. Okay, so this is a built-in function. So you can see it's a built-in function because it's turned a kind of pink purple color. So just like if I did, for example, print, you can see that happens like that. Right? So it's not the same as any of these other ones, like connect is coming from SQLite 3. So you can usually tell con is coming from here because this is one that I created. So con is like that. That's a function that I've created just there. Okay. So in the open, what we want to do is create a web page. And this is the easy bit. So I'm just going to put in double quotes. The first part of this, I need to say what the file is. So I'm going to say web report, okay, .html, web report.html. Then after that, I put a comma for this open, and I need to put the mode. Now, what is the mode? Well, the mode is W for write. So write is in create, okay, so that's what W is. You've got R for reading. So whenever you do this open, sometimes you're using this open to create a file, so that would be the W. You've got the R for reading, and then you've got things like A, which would be to append, which means like kind of like adding more information into a file. So of course we don't have this web report, so what we want to do is do W. Now that is a lowercase w. Sometimes students accidentally do uppercase. It doesn't like it, okay? So just W like this. Now, we don't actually have to write the mode here. You could actually just leave it like this, and you would have the name and then W. We could actually add more information in here. You can find on the internet what kind of information you can include in this file. But I'm going to write the mode for the moment so that you know what that W does. Okay. So here what I will do is it's the same as before, sort of it creates our rights file. Okay, that's what this does. And then we will want to put some information in it. Now what we can do is just test this. So I'm just going to copy that name there and just put it underneath to run it like there. So make sure it's not indented. So this web report creates this file. So it'll appear here for me. My connection file won't because I'm not going to run it anymore. So if I run the module, okay, and you can see it pop over to the right, web report.html. Now that is a HTML document. If I double click on that, it is going to open up in my browser. But as you can see, the same as with the database, there is nothing in that page. So what we can do is start to create something and put something in the page. Now it's dead easy to do that. We can just say file.write. So we would say file.write, and then in the quotes we put what we want into that. Okay. Now the normal thing to do would be to put some HTML. So what we're going to do is do 3 single quotes, and then on a new line 3 single quotes, and we're going to write some HTML here. So I'm going to just indent it all. Now this is a different code. Okay, so I'll just show you what HTML looks like. If I go to W3 Schools website, hopefully my internet's working. Seems a bit slow at the minute. Oh, here we go. Right, so this whole page is done using HTML, of course. It probably has other programming languages in there as well, but that's using it JavaScript. So here is an example of HTML. So what HTML has is an open tag, like this. This is called a markup tag, and it always has a close tag. Pretty much everything. There's like a couple of exceptions, but open, close. You can see here, open, close, open, close, open, close. Now, to look at this basic page, what you can see is we generally have this first bit of blurb first, but then the body is what you will see in your web page, right? The body is what goes in there. So let's create some of that. So we will do the less than sign, but it's not less than sign. This has been used as a kind of like a bracket as such, okay? And I'm going to say put in caps doc type HTML. So I'm just basically specifying what kind of document type this is, and it does not. This first one does not have a close tag. Okay, so it's just like that. It's just open. That's it. Okay. The next bit I'm going to write is HTML. Now HTML in general is written in lowercase. Okay, this one is written, this little bit here for the document type is uppercase, but this is all, the rest of it's all lowercase. So usually I do indentations for all of this kind of stuff. So I do a head of my page, and then I'm going to do the title. Title can stay on the same line. So I'm just going to call this web reports. And when I close the title tag, that's how I close it. So you can see I've got HTML open, head open, title open, close title, and then I'm going to go \1 and close the head. Now the reason I'm doing it like this, indenting and so on, you don't actually have to indent it. And in the example that we saw here, it isn't indented, but it just actually makes it a little bit easier for you to read it. Okay, So the next line, what do we want to do? Well, we finished the head, so we can go straight into the body. So the body of the document is what appears in your web page. This title will appear like in the bar up here. So if I have this web page here, in the tab for my web page, I'll just show you here. You can see it says web report.html. That's because there is nothing in this title, right? So that web report will go in there. So instead of saying the name of the file, this will say that instead. Okay. So the next bit we want to do is the body, right? So the body, and then here we can do, let's say we just do H1, which is heading 1. And I'm going to say SQL web reports, and then close that H1 tag, and then underneath you could do a paragraph or something like that if you wish. I'm just going to say p tag for paragraph, and I'll say hello world. Right, so you probably recognize this. Most of you have done that before. Right, keep on doing caps. Right, so what tags do I need to close? I need to close my body tag and my HTML tag. So right here, close body, and then the last one, close HTML, and then this line I can just take away. So it's like this. Okay. That is it. That is your code. Now I could indent it all a little bit further like that if I wanted to. It doesn't really matter. As long as you just see what it looks like. So the file.write will write that into this file for me. And then after that bracket, what I need to do is close the file. So I need to do file.close, open and close brackets, and that's us done. Okay, so I can leave a space there, and I'm running this. So next time I open this document, it will have a title, and I'll show you that, and then it'll say a heading 1, which is the biggest one. So there's H1 to H6. This is SQL web report, and then underneath it'll just say hello world. So if I run my module now and created the page, here we go, and there you go, SQL report, web report, hello world. Now you can't see the title because in my browser it doesn't come up like that, but if I open a new tab, there you can see it now. It says web report right there. So that web report here is this title. SQL web report is this bit. Hello world is that bit. The name of the file, well, you can see the name of the file over here, and that's that done. Okay, so that's our web page that we've just made using a Python script, which is pretty cool that you've been able to do that. Now, the last thing what we want to do is get it to maybe open up automatically for us. So imagine I've got no browser open, so I've just closed Safari. Now Safari is my default browser, so what I'm going to do is import a couple of other modules, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get it to automatically, when we run this script, automatically open your default browser, and you'll like this. It's like a little trick. So we need to do a couple of things. I'm going to import another module called OS, and I'm going to import another module called web browser. Okay, so you can see I've just imported them a little bit differently. I haven't imported everything like that. I've just imported OS and imported web browser. So there's just a couple of things that we're going to use. Right, so down near the bottom, I'm going to get it to open this. So what first of all I'm going to do is use that OS one. And OS, I want to get the current working directory. Now, what does that mean? Well, current working directory, if you imagine you've got folders, like here, So I've got documents, desktop, downloads, and so on. So what I want to do is get the current directory of where my program is. So that would be my desktop. So I've got this OS one. So we will use that to do that. So I'm going to say path. So this will be called the path. And the path is essentially, if I explain that, down here I've got it on I've got mine set up like this. So you can see Macintosh HD, users, Paul Michael, documents. If I go into a folder, you see it's now gone into 01 work. If I go into class exercises, you can see now that is the path of where, say, this file, for example, is. Okay, that's what path is. Right, so what I need to do is find out the path, right? So they're going to use OS and then a function called get current working directory, open and close brackets. And I'll just put a comment saying gets the current folder. Okay, now we can test that as well. So we can just say print path. And if I run this then, okay, so it's telling me where my program essentially is. My program's on the desktop, so it's users Paul Michael desktop. Okay, so that's what it's done for us. So I know that works, brilliant. So we've got the path, and then what we want to do is we want to get the file name. So the file name is webreport.html. So we will say file name, okay, or file name, like that maybe. And I'm going to put in quotes, and I'll say file, 3// quotes, this space, and I'm doing a plus, but this plus is not adding. This is going to put this part and path together. So I'm going to then put path, which is this path here. And then I'm going to put the name of our file. So it is then, it would need to be a / to get that path, and then it is web report. So I need to make sure I just copy it exactly. So I'm going to just copy that. So I've put a /, make sure you get that / in there, HTML, close that, and that's it. So I'm just going to then put a comment saying path and file name, like this. And then we're going to use our web browser, this web browser module. So, oops, down here. Now, this web browser module has an open option as well. So it's exactly the same as this, open. So this is why I need to do it this way, right? So I say web browser, and I'm specifying the web browser module, and then dot open. Okay, so you can see that the open doesn't change color or anything. If I did a space there, it would, but you don't want it to do that. So you want to make sure there's no spaces. Open, and then I'm just going to say the file name. So my file name here. So that's this file name. And then I'm going to say new, and I'm going to put 2. Now there's different options for this. So what this will do is this will open up a new tab. So I think it is, you've got 0, 1, and 2 that you have for the options. And if you do 2, if your web browser is already open, which it probably is, it'll open up a new tab. Okay. So I'm going to put it in the comment to say opens default web just browser. Okay. Now, there is different ones. You can look up different things that you can do with web browser. You can open specific browsers, but of course, you could say open up Firefox. But if you don't have Firefox, like I don't have it on my computer, I've got Safari and Google Chrome and the Tor browser. But if you can specify specific browsers, but if you do this, it just opens the default one that your computer's set to, which is better. So I'm going to run the module, and you will see my Safari browser hopefully opening. Let's have a look. Oh, and it's bouncing at the bottom there, and it's opened, and there you go. Brilliant. That is so cool that we've been able to do that. All right, so that has just opened up this report for us. Now, that's the end of the lesson. What you need to do is obviously just make sure you have done everything exactly the way I've shown you. And hopefully this exercise has opened your eyes a little bit to some of the possibilities of things, right, out there, and how some of these websites and programs work in general. So if you can imagine, next time when you're looking at Amazon with your mum and dad, or your mum and dad, or your brother or sister, are looking through Amazon, thinking of things that they want to buy, you can see how some of that web page might work. It would be using a database connection to display the different items or products and the description of the products and the comments that people are writing with feedback and recommendations. All of that comes from a database, and it creates a web page for you to look at it, right? So it could be using Python. I don't know. It might be using a different language like PHP, for example. But you can now understand how some of this kind of stuff works. Okay, so if you have any errors in your code when we've done some of this testing, the only thing we haven't tested really is our query. But as I say, we can't really do that query yet because we haven't got any actual database to work with. Okay, but we will in the next lesson. We will do something with that, and then we will start creating a report. So we'll probably change a lot of this HTML, well, specifically this bit. The rest of it will probably stay the same. Okay,